Give me the key. My father held out his hand, while 2 suitcases sat at my feet. I stared at him. Dad, it's Christmas morning. I know what day it is, Erene. Behind him, the Christmas tree was still glowing. Presents sat unopened beneath it. The smell of the breakfast I had gotten up early to make still drifted from the kitchen. My mother stood beside him, holding my latest rent transfer receipt. You question the increase again, she said. We're tired of your attitude. My attitude? I looked between them. I've paid you $1,450 every month. I paid toward the utilities. I replaced the water heater. I just helped pay for the roof. And you should be grateful we've allowed you to stay here this long, Dad said. Allowed me. At 29 years old, I had spent years paying to live in the house my grandfather Arthur once called home, while my parents reminded me constantly that without them, I would have nowhere to go. Now Dad wanted my key. Where exactly am I supposed to go today? A voice came from the hallway. Not really our problem anymore. My younger sister Vanessa leaned against the wall, smiling. Then she glanced toward my bedroom. That was when I understood. You already promised her my room. Mom didn't answer. Vanessa did. Good luck starting over. I could have screamed. Instead, I pulled the key from my ring and placed it in Dad's palm. Then I carried my suitcases outside. In my car, I checked my bank balance. If I was careful, I could afford a hotel for a few nights and maybe still scrape together an apartment deposit. While searching my bag for my ID, my fingers touched an old yellow envelope. Grandpa Arthur had pressed it into my hands shortly before he died 2 years earlier. If you ever feel like you don't have a home, he'd told me, open this. Mom had later waved it off. Your grandfather was confused near the end. It's probably sentimental paperwork. I had believed her. Until that morning. Inside was a bank card, a handwritten note, a trust reference number, and the name of a bank manager. For the first time, I wondered whether Grandpa had secretly left me enough money to start over. When the bank reopened after Christmas, I went straight there. The manager typed in the reference number. He looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. Without saying a word, he stood, walked to his office door, closed it, and turned the lock. Why would a bank manager need privacy to tell me about what I thought was a small emergency account? The manager sat back down slowly. Before I explain anything, I need to verify a few details. I nodded. He asked for Grandpa Arthur's full name, date of death, and my identification. Then he looked at the screen again. Were you living at Arthur Caldwell's former residence? Yes. Until when? Christmas morning. His eyes lifted. My parents threw me out. For the first time, his professional expression cracked. Threw you out. I gave a small nod. While he stepped out to retrieve additional documents, I sat there thinking about everything that had happened after Grandpa died. Dad had started charging me rent almost immediately. The house costs money to maintain, he'd said. I paid $1,450 every month. Vanessa paid less. When I questioned that, Mom said, "You're older. You should carry more responsibility." And whenever Dad complained that the mortgage was getting expensive, I never saw an actual statement. Once I asked him directly, "Can I see what we're paying?" His face hardened. Tenants don't inspect the owner's finances. That sentence had shut me up. Now, sitting inside the bank, it sounded completely different. I also remembered the envelopes. White envelopes addressed to *Caldwell Property Trust ***. Whenever one appeared, Mom grabbed it before I could look closely. I had assumed it was estate paperwork. Now I wasn't so sure. The manager returned carrying a thick file. Much thicker than anything connected to a small emergency account should have been. He placed it on the desk, then set Grandpa's old bank card beside it. "Miss Caldwell," he said carefully, I need you to answer one question as accurately as possible. My stomach tightened. What? He folded his hands. Exactly. How long have you been paying your parents rent to live at that address? I didn't answer. Instead, I unlocked my phone, opened my banking app, and started scrolling backward through years of transfers, one after another. Rent, Caldwell House. Rent, Caldwell House. Rent, Caldwell House. The manager stopped speaking. My phone started vibrating before the manager could say another word. Mom. I declined the call. It rang again. Dad. Then Vanessa. 3 missed calls became 6. 6 became 9. What happened? The manager asked. I don't know. Then a voicemail appeared from Mom. I put it on speaker. Erene, call me immediately. And don't do anything stupid with Grandpa's paperwork. You don't understand what you're dealing with. I stared at the phone. Not what paperwork. Not what did you find. She knew exactly what I had. The manager glanced at the yellow envelope. Your mother knows about this. Apparently. He turned the file toward himself. What I can confirm right now is that this reference number belongs to a legitimate trust established by Arthur Caldwell. I leaned forward. And you are listed as the beneficiary. My mouth went dry. That doesn't make sense. My parents told me Grandpa left the house under their control. Before he could respond, Dad called again. This time I answered. Where are you? He demanded. At the bank. Silence. Then his voice dropped. Bring that envelope home. You kicked me out. This is bigger than some Christmas argument. You don't understand family finances. I looked at the manager. Then explain something to me. Why is my name on Grandpa's trust? Nothing. Dad. Still nothing. Then he hung up. Seconds later, notifications exploded across my screen. Vanessa had posted in our extended family group chat. Erene is trying to steal Mom and Dad's property because she's mad they finally made her move out. An aunt replied almost immediately. Erene, whatever happened, don't punish your parents. Another relative wrote. That house belongs to your mother and father. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Normally, I would have defended myself paragraph by paragraph. This time, I didn't. I photographed the first page the manager had shown me. Then I uploaded it. At the top was Grandpa Arthur's name. Below it, Caldwell Property Trust. And beneath that, Erene Caldwell, beneficiary. The messages stopped. For nearly a minute, nobody wrote anything. Then Dad finally posted. Being a beneficiary does not mean you own the house. Stop embarrassing yourself. I turned my phone toward the manager. He read the message once. Then again. He slowly pushed the phone back toward me. Actually, Miss Caldwell, he said, looking directly at me, in this case, it means considerably more than that. A second bank employee entered the office carrying another folder. This is our trust specialist, the manager said. She can walk you through the records we have here. She sat beside him and opened the file. Your grandfather didn't wait until his death to arrange this, she explained. The trust was established while he was alive. That detail made several memories click together at once. The envelopes addressed to * Caldwell Property Trust ***. Dad talking endlessly about a mortgage, but never showing me a statement. Mom grabbing the trust correspondence before I could examine it. And Grandpa's final warning. If you ever feel like you don't have a home, open this. The specialist turned toward me. You said you were paying your parents' rent. Yes, every month. We'll need to see those payments. I handed her my phone. Years of transfers were sitting there. Rent, Caldwell House. I also pulled up receipts for the water heater and the roof repairs. There's more, I said. They had me contributing toward utilities and other property expenses, too. The specialist compared my records with the trust documents. Her expression tightened. Funds were already allocated for legitimate expenses associated with this property. I stared at her. So why was I paying them? That's something the full accounting will need to establish. I still didn't know exactly how much the trust contained or precisely what authority Grandpa had given me. But one thing had changed. I was done paying first and asking questions later. I opened my banking app and canceled the next scheduled transfer to Dad. Then I booked a hotel. The file contained contact information for Grandpa's estate attorney, so I called his office and left an urgent message. Finally, I texted my parents. Do not dispose of anything belonging to me. I am reviewing Grandpa's trust. Dad called instantly. I declined it. Then Mom started messaging. Come home, Erene. We can handle this privately. There's no reason to involve outsiders. 2 days earlier, I had been an ungrateful tenant. Now they desperately wanted privacy. My phone rang again. This time, it was Grandpa's estate attorney. He verified my identity, accessed the file, and asked me to explain what had happened. My parents increased my rent. I questioned it, and on Christmas morning they packed my things and threw me out. What address? I told him. He interrupted before I could finish. Erene, they threw you out of that *** house. I met Grandpa's estate attorney with the complete trust documents spread across a conference table. He pointed to the transfer records first. Your grandfather placed the house into the Caldwell Property Trust while he was alive. Then he turned to the section governing the residence. You are the controlling beneficiary, Erene. Under these terms, you have the exclusive beneficial right to the property. I stared at the page. What about my parents? They were permitted to remain there because your grandfather expected the family arrangement to continue. Permitted? Yes. Not owners. Not landlords. Occupants. The attorney continued. The trust also maintains an account for property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and other legitimate expenses. That explained the bank account. It also made the years behind me look completely different. Dad had repeatedly blamed a supposed mortgage for increasing my rent. Mom had made me contribute toward repairs. I had paid for a water heater and helped cover roof work because they insisted those were the costs of being allowed to live there. Meanwhile, Grandpa had already established funds for legitimate property expenses. And the rent I paid them. The trust did not require you to pay your parents' rent. I looked down at the payment records I had printed. Years of them. My parents hadn't been charging me for the privilege of living in their house. They had been charging me to live in a house controlled for my benefit. Through my attorney, I arranged a meeting with them. Dad walked in carrying a folder of household bills. He placed it on the table like evidence. You're letting strangers turn this into something it is. My attorney remained silent. Mom took a different approach. Erene, your grandfather wanted this family together. I slid my payment records across the table. Then I placed the trust documents beside them. If this was my house, I asked, what exactly were you charging me rent for? Dad opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Finally, he tapped his folder. There were expenses. Which expenses? Maintenance, taxes, insurance, everything involved in running a house. My attorney spoke calmly. Those legitimate property expenses were already provided for through the trust. Dad stopped. Vanessa, who had come with them, looked from him to Mom. So what does this actually mean? I turned the relevant document toward her. It means Grandpa put the house in the trust, and I control the beneficial interest in the residence. Vanessa frowned. But Mom said eventually the house would stay with us. The attorney answered before Diane could. There is nothing here, giving Vanessa ownership of the residence. Vanessa's expression changed immediately. The bedroom she had smiled about on Christmas morning had never been hers to celebrate. Mom reached across the table. Erene, we made mistakes, but you don't do this to family. I moved my hand away. You threw me out on Christmas morning. We were angry. You packed my suitcases before I even knew I was leaving. Dad leaned forward. So what do you want? An apology? No, an accounting. My attorney requested a formal accounting of the money my parents had collected from me. Any amounts that could legally be recovered would be handled through the proper process. I stopped every household payment immediately. No more rent. No more utilities paid on their behalf. No more repairs disguised as my responsibility. But Dad still refused to accept that he didn't own the house. So the matter moved out of family conversations entirely. Through the trust and my attorney, I exercised my rights concerning the property and began the lawful process requiring my parents to vacate after they refused new occupancy terms. The relatives who had accused me of trying to steal my parents' house received the relevant ownership documentation. The family group chat became very quiet. Weeks earlier, Dad had stood at the front door with my key in his hand. Now formal notice arrived concerning his ** occupancy. Mom called me. Are you seriously going to make your own parents leave? I remembered my suitcases hitting the floor at 7:12 on Christmas morning. I'm not doing to you what you did to me, I said. I'm doing this legally, but you made this inevitable when you threw the actual owner onto the street. After the required legal process concluded, my parents moved out. Vanessa went with them. I returned to Grandpa's house with my key in my own hand. The locks were changed legally. I restored Grandpa's study and took direct control of the trust administration and property expenses. Nobody collected rent from me anymore. Nobody threatened to take my bedroom. Nobody got to decide whether I deserved to stay. I framed Grandpa's yellow envelope and placed it in his study. Not because of the account, not even because of the house. Because I finally understood what he had meant when he told me to open it if I ever felt like I didn't have a home. My parents charged me rent in a house I owned. Then on Christmas morning, they handed me the one eviction that ultimately became their own.